Chapter 4, I Don't Raise Her. The air froze for a moment. The person in front of her seemed to exude a strong sense of oppression. The little girl tilted her head, her face pale, her body cold, her eyes fixed on Siddle, not moving. It seemed like she was waiting for Siddle's answer. The room was dark and quiet, so quiet that she could hear her breathing. Siddle's pupils contracted, she held her breath and blinked, hearing her heart pounding as if it was about to jump out of her throat. Thump, thump, thump. But the next second, in that goosebumps-inducing atmosphere, Siddle smiled sweetly, flatteringly and without any stinginess. Sister, your paintings are so beautiful, they even glow in the night. Her bright golden curly hair was messy and fell over her shoulders, her clear blue eyes radiated the innocent smile of a child. You're so amazing, she said, then lowered her head in disappointment. Unlike me, I don't know anything. The crystal-like pupils reflecting the purple light were still staring at her, reflecting the fluorescent paintings plastered all over the wall behind Siddle. The childlike paintings transformed into completely different shapes under the purple light. Several sunflower bushes facing the sun, the reflection was an ugly woman sketched with simple strokes, a dagger from above pierced through half of her head, fresh blood flowing down from the top of her head. The fairy tale castle turned into a room burning in a huge fire, several small people struggling in pain in the fire. A dry tree appeared in the rows, a person hanging from a tree was swaying. Sister, the little girl timidly called, hugging the messy pile of blankets and pillows, wanting to get closer to her sister. The person standing far in front of her retreated in disgust. Siddle saw the little girl's eyes looking down at her as if she was examining her. Siddle pretended to be an innocent little child, tilting her head and staring at Esther in confusion, seemingly puzzled as to why Esther refused to interact with her. Only she could hear her heart beating like a drum in her body. After a long while, the brown-haired, fair-skinned girl moved her cold gaze away, as if she had let down her guard. Don't tell your parents about my paintings, understand? The girl said coldly, her voice was small and emotionless, like the snow falling outside the window in winter. There was no warmth at all. Yes, Siddle winked, obediently agreeing, I'll listen to you. After another moment of silence, she asked softly, Sister, don't you like me? In the darkness, her expression couldn't be seen clearly, but her voice was clearly filled with sadness. Although I like Annabelle very much, but if you like it too, I can bring it here for you, she timidly asked, can you stop hating me? At this moment, Siddle's eyes were very sincere, filled with anticipation. Without waiting for Esther to reply, she quickly said, then I'll go get Annabelle for you. She hugged her blanket and pillow again, turned around and ran out. Esther. A few seconds later, she remembered that Annabelle was that doll. Suddenly, she thought of something, her face illuminated by the purple light became gloomy and angry. If Siddle's innocence was a disguise. She was about to chase after her, then bumped into Siddle who had turned back in a flash. Look, she held the doll high, this is the doll I want. She acted very quickly, hugging the doll into the room. Following the light from outside the window, she glanced around, and found that there was still an empty spot on the bookshelf opposite the bed. Siddle tiptoed to put Annabelle on her feet, smoothed her skirt, and reluctantly turned her head to say, the doll has a soul, you have to treat it well. In the darkness, Esther looked at Annabelle on the bookshelf, suddenly having a strange illusion. In the blink of an eye, she seemed to be facing a living being. But that illusion disappeared very quickly, she didn't even have time to think, Siddle had already come in front of her. Do you want to sleep with me? She said happily, thinking that if she had a tail, it would be wagging crazily right now. I like sleeping alone. Esther refused her, still not paying much attention to the doll. Her cold eyes seemed to contain a strange meaning, the corners of her lips curled up in a smile. You go home. Siddle. Oh. As expected of her, the green tea smells like Longjing tea from Westlake. But at the same time, she also breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that she had temporarily fooled her. What is the dye that turns brown under purple light? Siddle didn't want to think too much, but the truth told her that the most terrifying answer was correct. It was blood. She continued to maintain a disappointed smile. Okay then, sis, wait until you like me later, then we can sleep together. But there probably wouldn't be a later, Siddle thought indifferently. First Annabelle, then Esther. Where did her parents find so many evil things? I'm going to sleep now, good night. She waved goodbye to Esther. The curly brown-haired girl stood still, her indifferent eyes following her actions. Siddle left Esther's room, which was a distance away from hers. She had only taken 2 steps when she suddenly turned around and glanced back. Esther was already standing in front of the door behind her, looking at her with cold eyes. The dark purple light only illuminated half of Esther's body, the other half was immersed in darkness, looking like her soul was only half a person, staring at Siddle on the dark corridor. Fuck. Siddle laughed awkwardly twice. Sister, no need to see me off, I know the way. There was no need to be so polite. Esther still didn't react, just squinted her eyes, and gave an elegant smile. It's okay, you see me back to my room. Siddle, all right. So she still didn't stop doubting her. Was she afraid that she would tell her parents the secret? She could only turn around and continue walking back to her room. Just thinking about that cold gaze still fixed on her back made Siddle feel uncomfortable. After returning to her room, Siddle unconsciously turned her head. Esther was still standing in front of the door, staring at her. Siddle turned on the lights in the room, decisively shot a heart signal at her, then mouthed a good night, smiling as she closed the door. She also didn't forget to lock the door. After locking the door, Siddle began to ponder, did her family do something unforgivable that led to the recent misfortunes? The white swing that had a gorgeous demon doll on it a moment ago was now empty as before. But giving Annabelle to Esther, then a person and a doll in the same room shouldn't cause any trouble, right? Siddle hesitated a bit, then she immediately dismissed these unnecessary worries. What did Esther Christian and Annabelle Higgins have to do with Siddle? So after washing her face, Siddle happily went to bed, covered herself with the blanket, and prepared to have a good dream. As for dealing with Esther, she could leave it for tomorrow. If that girl could live peacefully with Annabelle, nothing would happen. Esther sat on the edge of the bed, opening and closing the knife in her hand, the sharp blade reflecting a cold light in the darkness. The little girl stood up, walked to a drawer in the corner, opened it, and threw the knife in. In the drawer, besides the knife, there was also a rope, some unknown pills, alcohol, a lighter. The little girl closed the drawer, and suddenly heard a very small cracking sound. The doll on the bookcase fell out. The little girl doll had a smiling mouth and was wearing a beautiful dress. Esther reached out to throw it into the corner of the room. She didn't like dolls, and originally wanted to possess it because that foolish and timid girl seemed to cherish it very much. Esther wanted to secretly sow discord. But after seeing the doll clearly in the dim light, she suddenly felt that it was fine to leave it here. The doll was exquisite and beautiful, an elegant work of art that contained blood. The little girl propped the doll up. From this angle Annabelle was just facing the bed. Esther adjusted the position, silently looked at it for a while, then turned off the light and prepared to sleep. After turning off the light, the deathly paintings on the wall returned to their innocent appearance as in the day. On the bookshelf, the doll lay quietly in the quiet darkness, its evil smile stiff. It still did not move, its blue eyes seemed to be covered in dust, staring at the opposite bed and the person who had slept on it. A peaceful night. Early in the morning, Siddle was awakened by Ray. When she yawned and got out of bed to change her clothes, she heard Ray's lustful voice. "Hurry up, honey, your sister is waiting for you at the door." Siddle had created a psychological shadow because of what happened last night. Hearing that, she woke up. "What is she doing out there?" "Your sister is waiting for you to come down for breakfast together." Siddle almost blurted out, "Mom, I have something to say," but Esther was blocking her mouth outside the door. She had only a little doubt, but now that Esther was following her so closely, Siddle could confirm it. This person definitely had a secret that he didn't want others to know. For example, those paintings hanging all over the wall. She washed her face to sober herself up. The best way to get rid of her fear was to face it. She decided to quietly declare war on Esther. Her task now was to find an opportunity to tell her parents about the suspicious things about Esther. After all, she couldn't find the answer by herself. She saw too many motifs of clearly having a force to rely on but not needing it and persisting in investigating on her own, only to end up harming herself. After Ray called her to get out of bed, she left, and Esther was now the only one outside the door. Siddle adjusted her expression. As soon as she opened the door she saw Esther standing there silently. Seeing her come out she turned her head and smiled elegantly, gently saying, "Good morning, Siddle." "Siddle, good morning, sister." She couldn't help but think that she was a 1,000-year-old fox pretending to be with her, but it seemed that Esther still didn't know that she had seen through her tricks, so she went forward enthusiastically waved Esther's hand, smiling sweetly and dragging her downstairs. "You treat me so well, Siddle loves you the most." As expected, Esther's body stiffened. Siddle discovered that she was very good at hiding the disgust in her eyes. It seemed that Esther hated physical contact, but to Siddle, whether Esther liked or disliked it didn't matter. Because her goal was to annoy Esther. After achieving her goal, Siddle felt extremely refreshed. Even the usual breakfast tasted better. While eating, Siddle found that Esther was very restrained in front of adults. Moreover, in front of Kelson, he was strangely quiet and obedient. Recalling Esther's ferocity last night. "Siddle, this must be the power of green tea. New knowledge has been absorbed." Unfortunately, she met a professional tea picker. Esther was very clingy. Because it was Sunday, her parents were both home. She sat on the sofa and quickly clung to Kelson, acting spoiled. Ray turned on the computer to work beside her. Only Siddle was silently crying in the living room. Esther was clearly not at ease with Siddle. Even though she hid it very well, Siddle, who was hugging the game console, still sensitively detected her occasional glances. Siddle did not show any expression, concentrating on playing the game, and smiled faintly in her heart. Is that all? To deal with this level of green tea, she did not even need to think. If this Esther did not know what was good for her and kept clinging to her parents, to be more precise, clinging to her father, then she should not blame this demon-capturing master for appearing again in the world.